midday, and then I will close it on next week, Tuesday, midday as well. So that you have, or maybe Saturday, and then you have Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday, midday to submit. So we are going to write the test up until the work we do today, which is clause 11. And then the rest we will do after the Easter holiday. Just clarity, when do you guys close and then when do you come back? I think it's the 28th that you close. When are you coming back? Do you guys not know how long your holiday is? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, ma'am. I'm just checking on my side. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. All right. No, that's fine. I ended up thinking maybe
Ma'am, it
I'm
says
not.
on the timetable, the 5th of April.
Okay. All right. So they're just giving, so it's the 28th to the 5th. Is that what it says? So like they're giving you 1 week. But the 6th is Easter, so you can't come back on Easter Monday. So that long weekend, the 3rd to the 6th. Okay, please just check. I know we were given a few revisions of the school term. I will just double check as well. But anyway, we're still going on with the JBCC contract. Before I proceed, do you guys have any questions from what we covered last week? Okay, no questions. I am in presentation mode. So if you need to ask something, please just speak up. Otherwise, if you raise your hand, I may not see it. So I can't remember where I stopped last week, but I do remember that we have to do clause 8, 9, 10, and 11. So I'm just going to, if it's a little recap, speak on employers, agents, and design responsibility. So that is just on clause 6, where clause 6 sets out the responsibilities of the principal agent in other projects. This is referred to as the project manager. So before project managers or project management as a career became a thing, the designers under JBCC would be your principal agent. So you'll see you'd have an architect, and then the architect would also be the principal agent. Now we have the design team, and then we have a project manager who becomes the principal agent. So he doesn't have any other responsibility. And this you would see, I don't know if you've ever done fee scale calculations. I don't know which year it is that you touch them, but you'll see that with one of the designers, there's always that principal agency fee if there's no project manager. And they added, I think from stage 5, from construction onwards, it's 10%. So it's their fee plus 10% for principal agency. So anyway, in the JBCC, I do remember I spoke about this last week, that the principal agent has full authority to act on behalf and bind the employer. However, he doesn't have the authority to amend the agreement. So the agreement is to stay as is. Whatever it is we agreed that would be delivered is what will be delivered. He doesn't have. But in terms of implementing it, so certain things like approving variations, where you increase time and cost, he has full authority. So that is what JBCC gives them. However, if you are dealing with certain companies, you find that they curtail, or the state, let me just say the public sector, the principal agent does not have full authority because the law does not allow that the state gives authority or delegates that authority to an outsourced entity. So usually whatever decisions that he has to make, he would have to present to the client. The client agrees, and then he gives the answer back. So he would just make a recommendation to the client. So let's say there's discovery of hard rock, and now excavations are going to be slightly expensive. They work out just how much, and then he will write to the employer to say, please note, this is, so you find that the turnaround time in terms of giving the contractor a decision is not as quick as when the principal agent has that full authority. So the other agents would deal with specific aspects of the work. So in terms of the agreement, and the principal agent will give the contractor notice where such authority is delegated. So if you go onto the JBCC contract, in your preliminaries, you'll see there's a section where they are identified by name, who the architect is, who the principal agent is, who this engineer. So it's all names, what their responsibilities are. And then you have the list on the contract as well, the list of persons who are authorized to act on behalf of the parties. So the contractor will also identify his people. You have the price document, which could be a schedule of rates. Generally, with the JBCC, we use a bill of quantities, and that is your price document. We use it for prices. It cannot be used and shall not be used as a specification of material and goods or methods. Okay. I spoke about this again last week to say if the specification say Merantискetting and the bill of quantities refers to clear pine, you go with what the specification says. So this is subclause 5.4 of the JBCC. Then you also have the effect that in subclause 5.5 that the contents of this agreement shall not be published or disclosed or used for any purpose other than for that specified in the agreement by either of the parties. Or if they're going to use it for other things, they should have permission from the other party to do such or to do so. You have the responsibility of the other agents or even the principal agent to timeously provide copies of drawings, unpriced bill of quantities, other construction information at no cost to the contractor. So this is specified in the contract. Generally, we give the contractor 3 copies of everything. And then if he needs more copies, then that he would have to pay for. And then surplus 6.6 would tell you that the employer shall not interfere with or prevent the principal agent or any of his agents from exercising fair and reasonable judgment when performing their obligations, right? So with the appointed agents who are appointed to deal with specific aspects of the agreement and have a delegated authority, when they do their work, everyone is held to account by their code of professional ethics. So in as much as they're employed by the employer and they're getting paid by the employer, they are supposed to act in an objective manner, in a professional way. So they can't act in a manner that prejudices the what is it? The other party, the contractor. They absolutely have to act in a manner that is fair. So if you are a professional, which I hope is the route you will follow from here, you could be working for the contractor, but your loyalty lies with the profession. So you do or you make decisions that are professionally sound. Okay. So if the principal agent, so this is subclause 6.3, or the other agents have any interest in the project other than their involvement in the works, then they would have to declare it where applicable. Okay, so if you own a company that will be supplying something to, because now if you're supplying the contractor with something that, let's say you're an engineer and then you have a company that supplies valves or whatever, and the contractor is going to buy from you. If the contractor is your client, there's a possibility that your decisions may not be as objective as they should be. So whatever interests you have, you need to declare. Also, in cases where the principal agent fails to act in terms of the agreement or any of the other agents, the contractor shall give notice to the principal agent. Even if it's the principal agent, he gives notice to him to say that you're not acting in a way that is consistent with your job or your profession. And then a copy is given to the employer. And the contractor would give the principal agent, say, 5 days to rectify that default, 5 working days. So the JBCC works with working days. Most of the time it's 5 working days. And when that default has not been rectified, then the contractor may give notice to suspend the works. So sometimes, let's say we had an electrical engineer and we're waiting for specifications. They are not provided. The contractor raises this in a meeting. Then eventually he notifies the principal agent to say, I'm still waiting for, for specifications from the electrical engineer. He's not providing them. Please supply me with these things within the next 5 days. If not, I'm going to have to suspend the works, because remember, for the contractor to stay on site, there is a cost involved. Okay, keeping things running on site. He's paying salaries, he's paying for whatever water is being used, whatever electricity and all of that. And if he's just sitting there not doing work because he's waiting for information, he can claim extension of time. He can suspend the works and say, please let me know when you guys are ready with the drawings, and then I'll come back. So you sort of reduce the work on site to such an extent that it's not prohibitively expensive to keep people there. So where the agents, either the principal agent or the any of the agents are unable to act, or maybe they cease to be the principal agent or an agent from in terms of the agreement, then the employer will appoint another principal agent or another agent that will replace the person within 10 working days of the date of such notice from the contractor. So I use the example of the electrical engineer because I inherited a project, a school, where the contractor waited because the electrical engineer had gone AWOL and notified the employer, everything. Eventually, they just had to abandon the site, like close off everything and hand it over, because the employer was not replacing. So if you fire the electrical engineer for whatever reason, maybe their company goes under and they cannot proceed with the work, the employer has 10 days to appoint a replacement agent who will take over the work. And they will notify the contractor. And if the contractor makes a reasonable objection about the appointment, then the employer shall not appoint that principal agent or that agent. And the objection will have to be made within 5 working days of receipt of notice of intention. So the employer will tell the contractor that, please note, we are to appoint so-and-so as the new electrical engineer. And then maybe the contractor then makes a reasonable objection why that person cannot be appointed. Okay, so again, the test of reasonability. Like I said, subclause 6.6, the employer shall not interfere or prevent the principal agent or other agent from exercising fair and reasonable judgment when performing their obligations in terms of the agreement. Then we look at the design responsibility. We did say that the design responsibility resides with the employer. Even the subcontractor's designs, they devolve to the employer. So for instance, when, let's say you have a subcontractor who's going to install cupboards in a house, all right, the architect will approve those. After that, he will provide his design in terms of the cupboards, how he's going to do them, what they're going to look like. As soon as one of the designers, the architect, approves them, that the employer becomes responsible for that design. So the contractor is only responsible for temporary designs on site, not actual design. So even with the mechanical engineer and the services, so the electrician will also come with his plans on how he's going to achieve what the electrical engineer has designed. Then the electrical engineer signs off to say, yes, this is perfect. I'm happy with how you're going to do it. Mechanical engineer will do that to the mechanical guy who's going to do the installation. The wet services engineer, same thing with the plumber. The plumber will tell him, this is my methods, this is how I'm going to do it. And this plumber would be the contractor's plumber. And the minute the engineer says, I'm happy with your methods, the responsibility of that design falls onto the client, because then his agents have approved it. Then we move on to works risk. Okay, so the risk of the actual contract itself. If you are building a clinic, if you're building a shopping center, you take insurance on the works. It used to be that, so let's say the work is worth 50 million, you would take the 50 million insurance plus 10% for fees. I don't know what the percentage is now. It should have increased. The fees have increased significantly. Anyway, so the idea is, in the event that the work is damaged, and this is whatever the cause is, not the employer's risk, the contractor has to fix it. He would have to go claim from insurance. There was a time we were building a church in Droberton, and 2 weeks before we took practical completion, someone came in and set a section of the church on fire. So we got a call at night to say the church is on fire, just when we thought we were going to give it to the client. So, the contractor's security should still be on site. But if there's more people who are attacking, because the security had been tied up and all of that, and then we didn't really think that anyone would want to attack a church, so then the contractor has to fix that. Obviously, the client is not going to pay for this. The contractor would have to claim it from his insurance. So this is the works risk that we're talking about when you talk about that insurance. And this works risk insurance is effective from date of site possession. So if we give him the site today, and then he until practical completion. So let's say he's going to be on site for 10 months. So from today up to 10 months later, if he's not, and the date of practical completion is revised, he has to extend that insurance. So for as long as the site is in the contractor's hands, the contractor is responsible for works risk, and his liability should not exceed the amount of the contract works insurance. So we can't say the work is worth 50 million NM plus the 10%. I'll use 10% for now. So it's 55 million. That's what his liability is. And as far as the works are concerned, I'm trying to remember what that term is from last year from economics, where you are underinsured and you find that a quarter. So for instance, if you have, let's say, 50 million insurance in the quarter, so that's the whole, that's 100%. And then if a quarter is damaged, you would be eligible to receive a quarter of the insurance. But if you've underinsured, that means it can't cover the work, type of thing. There is, I want to remember the clause. There's somewhere where it speaks about works insurance when it's alterations and extensions in terms of who takes responsibility. Okay. I'm just going to find it, because then sometimes you find that a portion falls onto the employer. So generally the contractor, in terms of works risk, that's the responsibility of the contractor. But when we're dealing with alterations, additions, and stuff like that, it could be the employer. And in terms of what the contractor covers from site handover to practical completion, he will repair, or he will make good physical loss and repair damage to the works when the damage is caused or arising from any cause before the date of practical completion, any act or omission of the contractor in the course of any work carried out in pursuance of the contractor's obligations after the date so if before practical completion, he covers everything in terms of insurance, everything that is claimable from insurance. But if after practical completion, something goes wrong, remember he's still on site, even though now the client has moved in, he's doing his snag list and all of that. If there's damage due to an act or an omission of the contractor, then despite the fact that it was after practical completion, the contractor would still take responsibility. So the liability of the contractor in respect of any loss or damage will include, but is not limited to, the cost of making good to such physical loss and repairing damage to the work. So whatever damage has been caused, the cost of doing it, including clearing away and removing all debris and any other costs to reinstate the works. And this is why. So sometimes you find that the architect would have to come and check again and approve and all of that. So they would charge for that. And this is why insurance would have to cover fees. And if there was anything that was free issue material, so let's say maybe the doors, the client had said, no, you don't have to buy the doors, you'll just charge me for installing them. When they take insurance, they will have to insure those doors, because it's not like the client has replacement doors. So should anything happen, let's say a storm hits the area and it's flooded, the doors are destroyed, the contractor would have to buy them. And he would obviously have to claim that from insurance. So, and then the cost of additional professional fees. So for whatever reason, if there's any additional professionals that needs to be involved after whatever damage that has happened. So subclause 8.5 says the contractor shall not be liable for the cost of making good physical loss and repairing damage to the works caused by or arising from this. So this is the exclusion. So 8.5 tells you what the contractor is not responsible for. So once the employer has occupied the works, or if there's a direct contractor or somebody from the employer's side who has taken occupation of any part of the works, so whether it's the employer's employees, the employer's agents, anyone to do with the employer, whatever damage that happens there, the contractor will not be responsible. Any act or omission by the employer, employer's employees, or the agents, anyone that the employer is responsible for, then the contractor would not have to cover. It's excluded from his liabilities. Any acts or omissions by a direct contractor, the contractor is not responsible for. So a direct contractor is one of those that the client would bring in to do specialist work on site, on the contractor side, to say this is something they're going to do. They specialize in, they're not brought in as subcontractor or anything. They come in, they do what they do. The contractor should make space for them and work with them. However, any damage they cost, that is for the client's account. Okay, now something just popped in the chats. I don't know what it is. I'll look at it. Just close my screen for a while. So if the direct contractor uses or occupies part of the works, then again, this will be excluded from the contractor's liability. The design of the works for which the contractor is not responsible, So remember, he's not responsible for design generally. So like whatever, the design of the works where he's not responsible, that's excluded. A defect in free issue material or goods, or in items that are specified by trade name where the contractor has no right of substitution. So if in your specification, you specify, let's say, a Swartland door, whatever, you give it and you say to the contractor, that's the type of door I want, and you don't say, find something that is similar. So the contractor goes and buys what you told him to buy exactly, and then it's faulty. He can't take responsibility for that because that is something that the client specified. If it's free issue material and the free issue material fails, that's not the contractor's responsibility. And then force majeure events. When we were looking at the definitions, we looked at what force majeure was, all right? And then I'm just going to remind you, but these are acts that neither the contractor nor the employer could have reasonably foreseen. And these are acts that are, or an exceptional event that is beyond the party's control, that they could not have reasonably avoided or overcome. So this could be a war, invasion, hostile acts of foreign enemies, insurrection, rebellion, revolution, military or usurped power and terrorism, civil commotion, disorder, riots, strike, lockout by persons other than the contractor's employees. So if there's disorder and riots and strike by the contractor's employees, then that's his responsibility. But if it's by other people and it's happening, but it happens to disrupt things on site. So for instance, if the taxi industry goes on strike for a full week and people can't get to work, the contractor cannot be held responsible for such. Okay. Then sonic shock waves caused by aircraft or other aerial devices, radioactive contamination, explosive materials, except where those explosive materials were being used by the contractor. Okay, and then natural catastrophes, earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, or volcanic activity. So this is excluded from the contractor's insurance, and the client would have to make a plan. So either they cover the insurance, or in the contract, generally what they do in the contract, they tell the contractor to take this type of insurance. It's called SASRIA, so that covers these exceptional circumstances. So he would add it to his insurance, or the client would just say they would take it. So as soon as the contractor becomes aware of any loss or damage to the works, he needs to immediately give notice to the principal agent. Okay. Then we move on to clause 9, 9.1, indemnity by the contractor. So this is where each party indemnifies the other in terms of certain events. So 9.1 says the contractor indemnifies and holds harmless the employer, the employer's employees, and the employer's agents from all claims proceedings for damages, expense, and loss, including legal fees and expenses in respect of or arising from. So I'm gonna read out, it's in your contract, page 8 of 30 on the JBCC contract. This is where I'm looking. So the contractor indemnifies the client's or the employer's employees, the employer's agents, all of that when it comes to death or injury or illness of any person, or physical loss or damage to any property other than the works arising out of or due to the execution of the works or presence or occupation site by the contractor. Should such an event occur, the contractor shall forthwith give notice to the principal agent. So this is where you take third-party liability insurance. So generally, the contract will specify that the contractor will also have to include third-party liability insurance. So for instance, if we're digging and we're causing structural disturbance to adjacent buildings, we would have to put in like lateral support insurance so that should any of those collapse, we would be able to recover. So again, if somebody falls into a ditch because the contractor left it open or one of those open excavations, the contractor is indemnifying the employer to say, okay, whatever happens there, the contractor will take responsibility because they're responsible for the site. Any non-compliance by the contractor with the law, or non-compliance with any regulation or any bylaw, or any of the terms that are put by any local authority or any other authority, and the failure of the contractor to obtain any permit, license, or approval that the contractor is required to obtain, that is his own responsibility. He can't pass it on to the client. Any loss or damage to construction equipment or other property belonging to the contractor or to the contractor's subcontractors, but this includes direct contractors. So if for whatever reason, the contractor's crane on its way to site is damaged or whatever, the contractor has to deal with that. It's not the client's problem. Then 9.2, then the employer indemnifies the contractor of the following: any act or omission by the employer's employees or agents, and any other people for whose actions the employer is responsible. The contractor cannot be blamed. Okay, any act or omission by a direct contractor, again, the contractor is blameless. Design of the works, where the contractor is not responsible for such design, that's the employer's responsibility. Any use or occupation of the works or part of the works by the employer, tenants, direct contractors, or others, just people authorized by the employer will take responsibility for such. If the contractor proceeds with the works on instruction from the employer without the employer obtaining the required permission under law in terms of this agreement. So the employer is responsible for design. And one of the things that they need to do when you design is you need to notify the local authority. So the city of Ekurhuleni, Mfuleni, city of San, whoever, you tell them, I am going to build on this site. This is what I'm going to build. So you give them the site development plan. Initially, you show them where everything is going to sit and what it is. So generally, when you submit your plans to municipality for approval, what they do is it starts at town planning, and the town planner will check, first of all, does the site belong to you? Okay. Are there any servitudes? So do we have any servitudes against the site? Are you contravening any of those servitudes? No. Okay, so you can build. Or is the site zoned correctly? So let's say this is a farmland. Now you want to build a mall, and okay, well, you need to rezone it to commercial. So before you can even move anywhere and submit plans for the building, rezone it first so that we can assess. So they want all of that in place. Once it's done, then they will look at your site development plan, and then it goes. Town planning says, okay, we don't have a problem from a town planner's perspective. There's no issue. Then it goes to the next department, which is building control. And under building control, then it will go to roads, stormwater, there's roads, stormwater, fire. I think there's about 6 departments in there that it goes through. I just can't remember the names offhand, but it goes through all of them. And for instance, they may say to you, the shopping mall you're building, this building where you have, there's let's say a stormwater pipe that runs there, you're going to build over it, we're going to have a problem, it's going to cause an obstruction, please change your design or remove this building from here, put it on the other side, or, all those things. And sometimes the client decides to ignore these things, and then they build. So they tell the contractor, here, go ahead and build. So we have a project like that. We're now trying to finish it. It's been running for 5 years. It's an early Childhood Development Center. Yeah, so it's somewhere in Midvaal. What happened there was a piece of land that belonged to national government, and provincial government just thought we can build on it. We'll have a discussion with national government. What they didn't know was that in as much as it looks like one portion of land, there's two portions. One belongs to national government, the other belongs to a tribal council. So the way they did their things, submitted the SDPs. So the professionals advised, we need to submit the SDPs, Society Development Plan, to the municipality, and it's like, you're going to delay. It was around election time and they needed to be seen to be doing something. You're going to delay. So they gave them permission to say to the contractor, go ahead and build. The contractor built, and the municipality came and stopped the development to say, first of all, you're building on two portions of land. You do not have rights. And I think about 3.5 million rand later that had been spent, that building had to be demolished and then everything be done from scratch. Rezone, redo this, get the piece of land transferred to your name, because one of the things they need to check is that this is your piece of land that you're building on. You can't just, or you have permission. So it can belong to somebody else, but they can give you permission to occupy. So you have those 99-year leases and stuff like that. Okay. So if the employer gives the contractor instruction to say proceed, and then later on that work has to be cancelled, the contractor would be paid for that work, even when it has to be demolished, because he went under the instruction of the employer. The employer decided to ignore the law, okay? So ignore getting permission to do what he needed to do. Any interference with the servitude or any other right not recorded in the construction information. So when they issue the drawings, they will show the contractor, please note there's this servitude here, there's this on the plans, they show him where everything is. However, if that information is not passed on to the contractor and later on they discover that he built on a servitude, they can't blame him because he didn't know there was a servitude. They should have told him, since they are responsible for design. Or for instance, let's say there's protected plants in the area and we say clear site, but we don't tell him, like, remove these trees, carefully keep them somewhere, and then you bring them back because we're not allowed to destroy them and the contractor destroys them. That is for the employer's account. Okay, so any loss or damage to any existing structure where this agreement is for alterations or additions to an existing structure. Should such an event occur, the contractor shall forthwith give notice to the principal agent. So for instance, if we're extending an existing building, the contractor is given plans in terms of how to do it. Generally, he also has the responsibility to protect the existing structure, but that existing structure would be insured by the employer, and obviously should damage occur, then there would be the issue of the contractor having to prove that he did everything to ensure that the structure was protected. However, so those kind of things. A defect in free issue material, again, we spoke about this under the works insurance. Any loss or damage to works where a certificate of practical completion has been issued or practical completion has been deemed to have been achieved. So the client has moved into the building and then a window is broken or something like that. That's no longer the contractor's responsibility. Okay. Any advance payments that are certified by the principal agent and are paid by the contractor to subcontractors. If anything happens there, the contractor still needs to be reimbursed, okay, because those were approved by the principal agent. So that's your indemnities. Then we move on to insurances, which is your clause 10, okay? So whichever party, the party responsible, based on the contract will identify who's responsible for what insurance, right? So whichever party is responsible will effect and keep the respective insurances in force in the joint names of the parties from the date of possession of site until the issue of certificate of practical completion, with an extension to cover the contractor's obligations after the date of practical completion. So again, when we look at the works themselves, once practical completion is reached, then it's no longer works because this is the facility is fit for purpose. Now property insurance would take over, right? So you have contract works insurance. So that will make provision for the works that shall make provision for direct contractors, free issue material, professional fees, temporary works, clearing away and removing of all debris, and any other cost to reinstate the works, and where required, damage to employer owned surrounding property were not covered under the removal of lateral support insurance. So you can have lateral support insurance. And if it covers those, you don't have to cover them in your works insurance. Okay, then you have supplementary insurance, where you cover the works against loss or damage caused by civil commotion, riot. Remember that SASRIA that I mentioned. So those force majeure items. So again, supplementary insurance, it could be that it's taken by the contractor, or maybe the employer says that I will take care of. Generally, everything is passed on to the contractor so that it's easily manageable, and then he charges the employer for that cost that he's incurring. Then you have public liability insurance, third-party insurance. It used to be called third-party back in the day. It's now public liability. So this is indemnity in respect of accidental death or injury to any person, or damage to any property. So your public liability insurance remains in force until the date of final completion, until the contractor leaves the site. Okay. So again, you get it in shops as well. I don't know if people have ever, those wet floor signs that they put in a macro, a Pick and Pay, while they're cleaning, they'll put the sign wet floor so that if you slip, they can say there was a sign that the floor is wet, because then if there's no sign but the floor is wet, you slip and fall, you can sue them. So their third party or public liability insurance would have to cover them in terms of your loss or damage, medical cost, and all of that. Okay, so we have that in construction as well for other people and other properties. Removal of lateral support insurance. This is necessary. It's not necessary on all jobs, but where the employer thinks or considers that the execution of the works may cause, so removing that may cause weakening or interference with the support of land or property adjacent to or within the site. When let's say you want to build, I can't think of one close, but I remember in Bloemfontein when they built the waterfront mall, they wanted to go 4 basements down so that they have parking. And the Mangaung City Council said, you're going to have to provide lateral support for the road there. And there's a stadium right next to it. We don't want any, so you removing the soil to dig, you may impact the support to those. So provide support and have insurance in the event that those structures collapse. Okay. So that was one of the conditions. So the employer will appoint an agent who will design and monitor the appropriate support structures for use in excavations and or in existing property that would form part of the works on site. And then you would have any other insurances that are deemed necessary. Okay, so the contractor generally has his own insurances for his equipment, and then insurances for the goods in transit. So when they're leaving the supplier to come to him, if anything happens to them on the road, remember he's already paid for them. Maybe they're stolen, destroyed, they would need to be replaced. So there's or those other insurances that could be specified. Where practical completion occurs in sections, so we do in phases. We say section 1, we give practical completion, or where the works is for alterations and additions, then it's advisable that the employer shall effect and keep in force contract works for insurance. So instead of giving it to the contractor, let the employer run with it, because then he would be moving into these buildings in sections. So generally with schools, we would say, okay, block A is the foundation phase. Once it's finished, the students move in, and then we move on to building block B, which is your intercent, so grade 4 to grade 7 and all of that, So if that's how the work is structured, generally it's advisable that the employer takes the works insurance, or again, like I said, if it's alterations and additions. So the party that's responsible for effecting the insurances will have to provide proof that insurances have been effected before they start with the work. So generally, when we sign the contract, the guarantees and the insurances would be part of the contract to prove that everything is here, they're covered for the duration of the construction period, and then they form part of the contract. So each party keeps a copy, all right? So any deductible amount where there's a claim. So remember, when you claim from insurance, they have an excess that you pay. So if you've covered, let's say, your cell phone, when it's stolen, and then let's say it's covered for 8,000 rand, they will tell you that, oh, sorry, you need to pay 500 excess, and then we will give you the difference. Or for instance, in terms of your geyser at your house, you call insurance and they say, okay, we'll send somebody to come and check. They come and check and they say, okay, no, your geyser has packed up, it's broken. And then the insurance will say, okay, just pay that person, the plumber, the first amount, which is the excess. So let's say it's 1,000, 1,500. I can't remember how much. It's now very expensive. So you pay that, and then once the excess has been paid, so those are the deductibles that they're talking about here. So the excess, the contractor will be responsible for the excess in terms of the contract. That is, if the contract is in his name, right? Unless the claim against the insurance is due to the default of the employer or the employer's people, okay, then the employer would be responsible for the deductible. So where the employer fails to effect the required insurances within 10 working days after notice to do so, the contractor may, on expiry of the notice period, suspend the works until such insurances are in place. So think lateral support. The contractor is digging and he wants proof from the employer that lateral support insurance has been taken, and the employer is not providing the proof. So the employer has 10 working days from when the contractor gives notice to say, listen, I'm starting with the digging. I need to be sure that we're insured. If the contractor, the employer fails to show this, the contractor can suspend the works and say, I will resume works as soon as you've effected the insurance. Okay. So when we do suspension clause, you'll remember these because there's a link there. So again, where the agreement is terminated, in terms of clause 29, we'll talk about termination when you come back from your Easter break. Where this is terminated, the contractor is not required to make good the physical loss or repair or damage to the works. The right to the proceeds of an insurance claim shall vest solely in the employer. So where we terminate the contract, but we can still claim from the insurance, the proceeds of the insurance will go straight to the employer, and then the employer will be responsible for fixing. Okay. So the contractor could still be responsible for insurances at the time of termination, and he will notify the insurer to clarify the status of the insurance cover and any further insurance obligations applicable to the works, to public liability insurance, supplementary insurance, and removal of lateral support insurance. Okay. So any amounts that are not recovered from insurance shall be borne by the employer or the contractor in accordance with their respective obligations. So depending on whose responsibility it is. So if you had underinsured, the additional cost will be for your own pocket, right? So the party that is responsible for the insurance, so whether it's the contractor or the employer, they will keep the insurer informed of any relevant changes in respect of the agreement. So for instance, if the value of the works increases, if they will, or any addresses change, any of that, they will inform the insurer, because then insurance could use any of those as an excuse not to pay. So subclause 10.10 says the parties shall, at their discretion, effect insurance for aspects not insured, such as construction equipment and work by direct contractors after practical completion. So that is where I'm going to stop. I will not do securities. I'll do it with you after the test. So any questions? The class is very dead today. All right.
Evening, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
I'm all right. Just a bit fluid, but I'm all right.
I just wanted to check on the recordings. Is there any luck
Please
with
just
that?
email Miss Mapungwane and ask her. I haven't spoken to her. I've been a little bit too sick to do a lot of things. But yeah, please just ask her directly with regards to the recordings, because like I said, she had said that she would create. What I will do is also I'll set up a reminder for tomorrow to just speak to her to do the YouTube thing that she had promised, so that you guys have access. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay. So in the absence of questions, thank you very much for joining the class, and have a good week, everyone. I am going to stop recording and hope that one day you will get access to these recordings. I guess you will see my work again.